aka Joe Ramirez, sending him to the hospital. He died later that day. Police took Allison into custody, charging him with murder the next day. He was held on $1 million bond for about a month. He bonded out in July of 2022 after his bond was reduced.
The murder trial of a former Belton High School student. Suspect Caysen Allison is accused of fatally stabbing fellow student Joe Ramirez in a Belton High bathroom back in 2022.
This comes after several trial delays in almost 3 years since the incident.
Went down in Belton High School hallways that May 3rd day. The prosecutor began in their opening statements revealing there is a recording of the incident. They also said that the conflict between Joe and Caysen began after an incident at a prom after party, and that Joe swung at Caysen first, accompanied by 4 others in that bathroom.
I was in the courtroom today while they played a video of the fight that took place in the bathroom on a cell phone. Another witness to take the stand was one of the boys inside the bathroom at the time of the incident. He was the young man who recorded an 8-second video of the fight. The video shows Joe Ramirez throwing the first punch to Caysen Allison. That's when Allison is shown swinging back at him with a knife in his right hand. The two can be seen shifting to the corner of the bathroom, continuing to fight. Seconds later, Joe's brother is shown lunging towards Allison's friend, and 4 boys are seen fighting one-on-one fights in that bathroom. During that testimony, the defense asked the witness why he started recording and if Joe liked to have his fights recorded. The witness answered yes. That same witness said it didn't seem like Caysen wanted to fight, and he stopped recording after he heard a scream and got scared.
The bathroom again. The defense asked, "You can't say Caysen had no reason to be afraid." To which Rios replied, "I do not believe he was afraid. He could have left the bathroom when he saw us if he was afraid." Rios doubled down on his testimony from yesterday, saying they weren't in the bathroom to fight. It was a pit stop they made some days between classes. The defense came back with, "You didn't try to stop Joe when the fight started?" Rios replied with, "No, sir." After lunch, the court brought in Dr. Grant Hendon from the Dallas County Forensic Sciences Office, where photos of Ramirez's wounds were revealed. The photos showed 4 stab wounds. These images had all of Ramirez's family in tears and covering their eyes. The first one described was the one that eventually killed Ramirez, as the knife caused damage to his left lung, heart, and injury to his coronary artery, which is responsible for blood flow. The second wound was also in the area of the lungs. The third wound were actually 2 wounds connected, meaning the tip of the knife entered in one place and exited in a different place. This wound was on Ramirez's buttocks. The 4th stab wound was on the back of his left forearm.
Breaking news alert.
All right, we do begin today with some breaking news this noon hour out of Bell County, where a jury has reached a verdict just about an hour ago in the trial of Caysen Allison. We know a lot of you have been following this very closely. Allison was accused of fatally stabbing Joe Ramirez at Belton High School back in 2022. After several hours of deliberation, the jury found Allison not guilty of murder in the death of Ramirez, but guilty of criminally negligent homicide. News 10's Isabella Quintanilla is joining us now live from outside the Bell County Justice Center, where she has been following this trial since last week. Isabella, what can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Julie. It has been a long couple of days with the jurors deliberating for nearly 11 hours in total, and many people anxiously awaited the verdict. And as you can imagine, emotions were extremely high as they waited. Even before the jury came in, the entire courtroom was tense, with people on both sides of the court looking both nervous and already getting emotional. As the deputy read the verdict to the defense, there were gasps of shock and relief from both sides. And when walking out, the anger and frustration among Joe Ramirez's family and friends was clear, with one person throwing a water bottle against a wall and another screaming as they walked out of the building. We did hear from Allison's defense attorney, Zachary Boyd, who says this was a hard case, but that they're relieved by the outcome.
This case has been accompanied with threats against Caysen Allison, against Caysen Allison's family, against the defense team. You felt that tension in the courtroom.
Allison has been released under his bond conditions, which will stay in place until his sentencing hearing on June 16th. Now, depending on what Judge Falconer decides, Allison could face 6 months to 2 years in a state jail.
Josh Teetons, McLennan County District Attorney, who's here to share some of his legal expertise. Josh,
A verdict came down today, and it was for criminally negligent homicide. Please tell us what that means in layman's terms.
Yes, ma'am. So that has to do with the mental state of the defendant, the suspect in this case. And if you are charged with murder, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they committed that offense either intentionally or knowingly. Below that is manslaughter. That is a reckless offense mental state. And in this case, the jury came back and said those were not met by the state. In fact, it was only criminally negligent homicide, which has a low burden of negligence, as it's titled, much like a civil case with a car accident. That could be a negligence level. If a reasonable person should not have been speeding, should not have been driving erratically and caused an accident. Or another example, if a business owner is aware that there is a broken step and they refuse to fix it and somebody slips and falls, that is a negligent level, and that's the level that the jury had to find the mental state of that defendant was in.
And on that highest level for murder, what does that mean in a court of law?
Absolutely. So those all have varying degrees of punishment. So the biggest difference with murder versus negligent homicide is going to be the time. Murder is 5 years to 99 or life. And in the case of negligent homicide, that is a state jail felony with a maximum of a 2-year sentence.
And we were talking about intent a little earlier. What is the difference in finding intent in those two different charges?
Yes, so the jury would have had to found that he intentionally, by his actions, wanted to cause the death of that other individual, either by knowing that his actions would do that or specifically planning and intending to do so. They did not find that. They thought that instead a reasonable person standard should have known that that gross deviation of bringing a knife into that bathroom could have and ultimately did lead to the death of that other individual.
And as for the jury, what is the burden in them deciding one or the other?
This requires a unanimous verdict. They have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt, so that's up to the state. They have the burden to prove that. In this case, the defense was asking for an absolute acquittal based on self-defense. They did not think that that had been met by the defense. And so they came back with their guilty verdict, and it was unanimous for that lower offense level.
Yo, it's Big Ant, the spokesman, man. We back. Another edition of Urban Politicians TV, UPTV. Make sure you stay on your pivot at all times, man. Had to come tap in, and first and foremost, I do want to once again send condolences to the entire family of Joe Ramirez, his parents, his siblings, close family, loved ones, friends that went to their high school, people in the Belton, Texas community who was going through it with his loss. Most definitely them having to relive this moment, going through these trials, and even having to be in a courtroom where they seeing the autopsies and the images and the video after the stabbing of him bleeding out and things like that. That's most definitely traumatizing for them. So I want to send all of them condolences, prayers, and say rest in peace and God bless his soul, Joe Ramirez, most def. And I had a link in the description where you could watch the clips in the beginning at on Channel 10, Channel 6, and Fox. And this is coming out of the Killeen area of Texas. That's up more towards north, like not too far from Austin. And I just wanted people to get all those facts. Is why I let so much video play, and it's a lot of details and layers that go with this conversation right here. And I'm gonna get into this right up to explain why they dropped it down to a negligent homicide. And as I told y'all before, I come to give y'all the facts of how they happen. I can give an opinion, and I tell y'all all the time, opinions and feelings are good for entertainment and conversation, but the facts are what matter. Now the jury made their decision, whether we agree with it or not, whether y'all agree with it or not. But what happened with this case, there was prior issues and conflict between these two. They are both in high school, and this is why I tell people we have to make sure to avoid these things from happening. The next generation as teenagers and stuff, make sure y'all not putting out threats. Make sure y'all are keeping y'all hands to yourselves. As they had issues, a prom party, it was understood from what was presented in the courts and the other information, because I'm not in the courtroom, I can only go off what they put out there. And with the case that, hey, there was an understanding they were gonna fight at a later date. They had already had some supposed incidents that occurred, things that happened on Snapchat where it was understood what was gonna happen. I even seen in other reports that it was threats being made to this side, whatever, all that. But it got to the point where they crossed paths in the bathroom that day. Fight breaks out. They had it on video. Supposedly a 2-on-2 fight is what it led up to. But Caysen Allison pulled out a knife, stabbed him 4 times, and he passed away. And right after that, in that moment, once he got to the hospital or things like that, hit some very critical parts of his body with that stabbing. Now, it was charged as murder. They dropped it down to negligent homicide because the intent to kill was not there. Saying, hey, he didn't want to kill him. He didn't want him to die. That wasn't the thing there. This was combat. They was into it and stuff like that. And they got into a fight. Different people in the bathroom at that moment. They say that they was not planning on fighting this day, that they just ended up in the bathroom together, supposedly. That's what the reports are coming out saying. They supposedly had people in between them telling them, don't worry about this fight. Y'all finna graduate high school. Very unfortunate situation to see happen. But in the write-up to explain the negligent homicide part, in a press conference after the verdict, Boyd said criminally negligent homicide means the jury found Allison did not intend to kill Ramirez. They saw a young man scared, injured, reacting in a sudden violent encounter others initiated, Boyd said. In order to convict on murder, the jury had to consider 3 theories, which were based on whether Allison intended to harm Ramirez if they did not return a guilty verdict for murder. They also had to consider manslaughter, and if not manslaughter, the least severe of all charges, criminally negligent homicide. And like I said, that's going to be tops right there, 2 years in state jail. We have state jails, you got state prison. The state jail, the max sentence you could get in the state jail sentence is 2 years right there. They said 6 months to 2 years. The judge is going to make that decision right there. But this is why I told y'all about the stand your ground and self-defense laws in Texas, bro. I don't make the rules. I don't come up with the laws. When you go inside the courtroom, it ain't about what you know. It's about what you can prove. It ain't about how you feel. It's about how your defense works and how the jury works. And the jury is working off of the information you are sending them and promoting to them. Can you make them understand and see that he intended for him to die? That he wanted him to die? Because in the state of Texas, this is the stand your ground law. This happened inside of a high school, inside of a bathroom. They already had prior engagements of disagreements, prior engagements of beef. And from what they presented in the write-ups in the court, they was going at each other. Like, hey, we at each other in this moment right now. But when they get down to it, it's what happened in that courtroom. Whether I agree with it, you disagree with it, the law is the law. The law is what's written in print. So people can be subjective, have word semantics and all that of the sort, bro. It's all about the intent when it comes to that murder case. And that's how it's supposed to work. This is why I say avoid this at all times. Avoid putting your hands on people because it gonna get down to these words, these meanings and these definitions. Well, he stabbed him, but did he intend to kill him? Was his intent did he want him to die? You can do that, dog, in the courtroom. This is how the game go. I'm just telling y'all, and I want that to be understood also with Carmelo Anthony's case, because I said all of these things matter with this. Y'all can go do the word semantics all y'all want to. We have the stand your ground law, meaning if you feel like there's gonna be bodily harm, don't nobody, bro, you put your hands on somebody in Texas, because I'm just speaking for Texas, other stand your ground and self-defense states, there's a very, very understanding if a person put their hands on you at all or try to force you to do something, you then have a right to defend yourself. And then if they happen to lose their life in that situation, they then can say, was his intent to kill him? Did he want him to die? He got 1 stab wound, y'all. And most definitely, condolences to the entire family of Austin Metcalf, his parents, brother, everybody going through it with up there in Frisco. And most definitely, God bless his soul. But we just calling it, this is how the law works, this is how the land works. I don't make this stuff up. I told y'all this is how it happened. We done seen several self-defense cases like this in this country before, where they played out in this manner where you thought, well, hey, bro, nah, nigga, you approached him, you did this to him, and then or you killed him. He went out there out of bounds, not minding his business. He ended up killing the guy after the altercation and the confrontation, but he still walks in self-defense. Self-defense in stand your ground states and laws like the states like Texas, through the South, Florida, it get like that, bro. I just hate that we got to go through it like this, and it's got to be having these lessons learned like this. We don't want no teenagers who got their whole life ahead of them going. That's why I say avoid these type of situations at all times, man. Y'all tell me what y'all think. They not guilty on murder, school stabbing inside the restroom. You see how it played out, man. They said the intent wasn't there to kill. Stabbed them 4 times. They was back and forth, having arguments, having disagreements. Prom party, they had a disagreement. Understood they were supposed to fight at a later date, but they said, hey, he had reason to believe his life was in danger. He had reason to believe Joe, he liked it to fight. He was into fighting and having these type of things going on, wanted to have him recorded, but they said he didn't intend to kill Joe when he stabbed him. Tell me what y'all think. We got more coming, more videos, all that 1000 for shit show. Stay on your people.